Hello and thanks for joining us here on France 24 for France in Focus. I'm Tom Burgess-Watson. Coming up in the programme, fighting extremism, the French Prime Minister unveils plans to improve homegrown Islamic education. And to spank or not to spank, that is the question as Europe's human rights watchdog rebukes France for its vague laws on the issue of corporal punishment for children. And Major Tom to ground control. We take you to a David Bowie retrospective at the all-new Philharmonie de Paris. First, the Prime Minister announced this week that the government is going to pay for a twofold increase in the number of universities offering Islamic studies and theology courses. Manuel Valls says it's important that religious leaders are trained here so that they understand the French language and values.
They're the spiritual leaders of the Muslim community. In France, about 2,000 imams minister the country's large Muslim population, estimated to reach between 4 to 6 million people. Employed or volunteers, they're often underpaid and very popular among worshippers.
When you're sick, or for a divorce, you always go to him to have his opinion and know what the Quran says about it.
The imam who officiates the traditional prayer is the most knowledgeable person in the mosque.
The problem is most of them aren't trained in France. Many come from abroad without having received a proper training, like this imam from Marseille.
When you get here in France, no one asks you for a diploma or anything, and that's what's wrong. France is experiencing a wave of self-proclaimed imams.
For the last 20 years, though, Muslim centers like this one have opened throughout the country. Here, students can study the Quran, along with other university-level classes in philosophy, law, and the history of French secularism. The country is indeed very attached to a strict interpretation of the separation of state and church. Civic values that, according to this professor, need to be understood by France's future Muslim leaders.
The study of law is very important to us. It's one of our top priorities.
But there are only 4 of these Muslim centers throughout France. They're funded by admission fees, but also by Muslim countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, or Kuwait. During a visit at the University of Strasbourg, Prime Minister Manuel Valls outlined his plan to combat radicalization among the French Muslim community.
French imams who speak French, who love France, and that agree with French values, and that are funded by French money.
Funding coming from France, a crucial point for the Prime Minister. The government will also encourage imams to pursue a university course on the place of religion in a secular state, classes that are currently taught in only 6 universities across the country.
You can't be an imam in France if you don't know anything about French secularism and French history.
According to the French government, a dozen more universities will run programs for imams by the end of the year.
More than 30 years have passed since a deadly attack on what was a Jewish-owned restaurant, Rue des Rosiers, in the Marais district of Paris. 6 people were killed, 22 others were injured during that attack when gunmen stormed in, spraying bullets and hurling a grenade. But now, the French authorities say they have located and identified 3 people thought to have been behind that attack.
August 9, 1982, France's Jewish community is in shock. Several men have just thrown a grenade and fired into a packed kosher restaurant in the historic Jewish quarter of Paris, killing clients and personnel. In their escape, the gunman threw a second grenade and kept firing at passers-by.
I saw the guy shooting. He was wearing a gray suit. He had his machine gun underneath his jacket. He was shooting at everyone.
For decades, police couldn't identify any of the killers. It's only 33 years later that anti-terror judge Marc Trévidic issued international arrest warrants for 3 suspects. Mustafa Ben Imon was outside Goldenberg after the attack. His father, the restaurant's cook, was one of the victims.
For 33 years, we didn't know who did it. People said it was Arabs, then Jews, then French people, whoever. It's important to know the truth.
The suspects, identified through ballistic reports and testimonies from former Palestinian militants, were all members of Abu Nidal, a Palestinian organization that split from Yasser Arafat's PLO. They now live in countries that have voiced no intention of extraditing them.
I'd rather be cautious, because they still need to be judged and extradited from Jordan and the West Bank.
But anti-terror judge Martrevidic isn't a man to abandon cases over such concerns. In 2007, he asked for the extradition of a man he suspects in another anti-Jewish attack, the bombing of the Copernic synagogue in 1980. Although Canada has no extradition agreement with France, Hassan Diab was transferred in 2014. In France's Jewish community, some are reassured by these breakthroughs. Others say that if the discoveries are only made now, it proves former French investigators may have not been fully dedicated to these cases.
Maybe police woke up and intensified their efforts now that they too have been hit by terror. It's not only one community. Now police and journalists have been hit too with the attack on Charlie.
A lawyer representing the victims' family says arrest warrants send a message to terrorists. They will be sought anywhere.
Europe's top human rights body had tough words for France this week. That's for laws which it says are not sufficiently clear or binding on the question of corporal punishment for children. Well, that's reopened a whole debate here in France on just how it is that French parents can discipline their kids.
A slap on the wrist for France. Rights body the Council of Europe has condemned French laws on corporal punishment for children for not explicitly banning smacking. It was a British-based charity seeking to ban smacking globally that initially filed a complaint against the French legislation, while rights campaigners in France too have long called for a new law.
All the research, the MRIs, the sociological and psychological studies show that smacking has devastating effects on children's self-esteem and on their cognitive capacities.
18 European countries, shown here in blue, ban corporal punishment completely, and several more have specifically banned smacking. The other member states are under pressure from the Council of Europe to follow suit. A blow to parents in France, where polls suggest widespread support for the right to smack children.
It can be effective, as long as it's not taken too far.
I was smacked, yes. Not a lot, not regularly, but I think it made me behave better.
Children need a smack from time to time. Parents are too soft now.
The judgment has sparked debate in France, but won't force it to change its laws. Unlike the European Court of Human Rights, the Council can't punish its members.
Now, from stonemasonry to pastry making, every 4 years, the finest craftsmen in the land are awarded at a special ceremony at the French Senate. But this year's edition had an unexpected twist. The 19-year-old winner of the Best Young Apprentice Award nearly missed out on the celebrations. Armando Curri, who's originally from Albania, was told that he'd be barred from attending on the grounds that he's overstayed his visa. Well, in the end, senators from the Loire region, where he's been living, came to the rescue, and he was given the added surprise of a temporary permit to remain here in France. Well, we end this edition on the northeastern edge of Paris at the Philharmonie de Paris, the all-new state-of-the-art music concert hall, which has chosen for its very first exhibition a retrospective on David Bowie, which explores his music, his roots and his early influences. But if you too want to enter the incredible universe of the man who brought us Ziggy Stardust and Space Oddity, you've got till the end of May.
An exhibition dedicated to David Bowie at the Philharmonie of Paris. A testament to a career that spans almost half a century and changed popular culture.
It's great music, great style and looks. But I also think there's a sort of profound message that comes through the exhibition about the power of the individual, and I think it's Bowie's own radical individualism that inspires us still today.
The exhibition concentrates on Bowie's genre-defying style, which shocked a nation, such as here in 1972.
That was the moment when Bowie was on top of the pops in 1972, the moment that really traumatized the English youth, those who saw him. When they were 11, 12, 13 years old, it planted a seed in them to want to be a rock star one day.
To us, we've never seen anything like this before.
Haven't you?
No.
To the song they're playing on the radio.
featuring personal notes, early recordings, self-portraits and even a tissue with the star's makeup on. It's a Parisian pop paradise. And it doesn't end there. A celebration of glam rock, an homage to David Bowie put on by Philippe Decouflet in Paris. Famous for choreographing the 1992 Olympic Games in Albertville, Decouflet fills his stage with singers dressed as Bowie who evolve surrounded by dancers and circus artists, interpreting Bowie classics. For the show's creator, it was a labour of love.
Musically, he was immense, but he was also a king of marketing. He was great at working on both fronts, musically, but also in terms of his image. He knew what he had to give of himself.
And now Bowie's Paris fans are giving back.
This is where we leave you on the steps of the Philharmonie de Paris. Thank you very much for watching. See you next week. And meanwhile, do stay tuned to France 24.